The coffee cup slipped from my hands when Melanie's palm connected with my cheek. The sound echoed through our kitchen like a gunshot. My 17-year-old daughter stood there, breathing hard, her face twisted with rage I'd never seen before. "Give me the keys," she demanded, her voice cold as ice. My son Jake froze at the kitchen table, cereal spoon halfway to his mouth. He was only 14, but his eyes held the same shock I felt coursing through my body. The sting on my cheek burned, but the pain in my chest hurt worse. "Melanie," I whispered, my hand instinctively touching my face where her handprint was probably forming. "Don't Melanie me," she snapped. "I need the car. Now." I'd raised this girl, changed her diapers, stayed up with her through fevers, taught her to ride a bike. I'd sacrificed everything for her and Jake after their father left us when she was 12. 3 years of being mother and father both, working double shifts to keep us afloat. Now she stood before me like a stranger, hands still raised as if she might strike again. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the morning sunlight streaming through windows that had witnessed happier times. When had my little girl become this person? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Jake's spoon clinked against his bowl, the only sound in our frozen tableau. My cheek throbbed with each heartbeat, but the real pain came from somewhere deeper. I'd always been the soft one, the parent who said yes when I should have said no. When Tom walked out, leaving me with 2 confused kids and a mountain of bills, I'd tried to be everything they needed. Maybe that was my mistake. "You can't just hit me and demand my car," I finally managed, my voice shaking. Melanie's laugh was harsh, bitter. "Watch me." She reached for my purse on the counter, but I grabbed it first. The leather strap stretched between us as we played tug-of-war with my life. "Let go, Mom. You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" I stared at this girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd made me Mother's Day cards with crooked hearts and too much glue. Where had she gone? Jake cleared his throat. "Maybe you should just stay out of it, Jake," Melanie snapped without looking at him. I saw him flinch, saw the hurt flash across his young face. She was turning into a bully, and I'd let it happen. The rest of the morning passed in suffocating silence. Melanie disappeared to her room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the family photos lining the hallway. I stood in the kitchen, still clutching my purse, watching Jake finish his breakfast with careful, quiet movements. "Mom," he said softly, "are you okay?" I forced a smile that felt like broken glass. "I'm fine, sweetie." But I wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. I'd spent 3 years walking on eggshells, telling myself that Melanie's attitude was just teenage rebellion, that she'd grow out of it. Every sharp word, every rolled eye, every slammed door, I'd made excuses for all of it. My phone buzzed. A text from Melanie. "Need you to drive me to Ashley's. Now." I stared at the screen, reading the message 3 times. Not a request. A demand. No please, no thank you. Just an order from my daughter, who'd slapped me 20 minutes earlier. My hands trembled as I typed back. "We need to talk first." The response came immediately. "Nothing to talk about. Car. Now." Jake was watching me, his eyes full of questions I didn't know how to answer. How do you explain to your younger child that their sister has become someone you don't recognize? Despite every instinct screaming at me to stand my ground, I found myself grabbing my keys 15 minutes later. Old habits die hard, and my habit was saying yes to keep peace in our fractured home. Melanie appeared at the top of the stairs like she'd been watching, waiting for my surrender. She'd changed clothes, applied makeup, transformed herself from the angry girl who'd slapped me into someone who looked almost normal. Almost. "Finally," she muttered, brushing past me. The car ride to Ashley's house stretched endless and uncomfortable. Melanie stared out the passenger window, her body language radiating contempt. I kept glancing at her profile, searching for traces of the little girl who used to sing along to radio songs during our drives. "We used to talk during car rides," I said quietly. She didn't respond. "Remember when you were 10 and you told me you wanted to be a veterinarian? You made me promise we'd get a dog when—" "That was stupid kid stuff," she cut me off. I'm not 10 anymore. No, she wasn't. At 17, she'd grown taller than me, sharper than me, meaner than I'd ever imagined possible. When had caring become stupid? When had dreams become embarrassing? We pulled into Ashley's driveway. Melanie was out before I'd fully stopped, door slamming behind her like a period at the end of a sentence. I sat in Ashley's driveway for 10 minutes after Melanie disappeared inside. Other mothers might have driven away immediately, but I couldn't move. The steering wheel felt foreign under my hands, like everything else in my life lately.
My phone rang. Jake.
Mom, where are you? Still at Ashley's. I'm coming home now. Okay. Mom, maybe you shouldn't let her treat you like that. Out of the mouths of babes. My 14-year-old son could see what I'd been blind to for months. Melanie had been escalating, the disrespect, the demands, the casual cruelty. Today's slap wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time she'd gotten physical. I started the car and drove home through streets that looked the same, but felt different. Every traffic light gave me time to think about moments I'd ignored. The way she'd spoken to Jake last week, making him cry over homework help. The way she'd rolled her eyes when I'd suggested a family movie night. The way she'd started looking at me like I was beneath her. At home, Jake was doing dishes without being asked. The sight of him, sleeves rolled up, carefully washing Melanie's breakfast bowl, broke something inside me. You don't have to clean up after her, I said. He looked up, surprised. I don't mind. But I minded. Suddenly, I minded everything. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the slap over and over. The sound, the shock, the casual way Melanie had demanded my keys afterward like hitting me was just an inconvenience she'd had to deal with. I'd raised her better than this, hadn't I? The house was quiet except for the familiar sounds of settling wood and Jake's soft snoring from down the hall. Melanie had texted around 9, demanding I pick her up at 11. I'd driven over like always, waiting in Ashley's driveway while she finished whatever teenage drama was more important than basic respect. She'd climbed into the car like a queen entering her carriage, not even acknowledging that I'd rearranged my evening around her schedule. Again. Take me to McDonald's, she'd said. Not, can we stop at McDonald's? Not, I'm hungry, could we grab something? Just another command from the girl who used to thank me for packing her lunch, with little notes. I'd driven to McDonald's, bought her food, listened to her complain about Ashley's other friends, driven her home, watched her disappear upstairs without a word of gratitude. Now, alone in my bedroom, I finally let myself think the thought I'd been avoiding. I didn't like my daughter very much anymore. Morning brought another confrontation. I was making Jake's lunch when Melanie swept into the kitchen like a storm system, already dressed and ready for school. I need $20, she announced. I didn't look up from spreading peanut butter. For what? Does it matter? Yes, it mattered. It mattered that she never asked, only demanded. It mattered that she hadn't said good morning to her brother. It mattered that she was treating me like an ATM instead of her mother. I'd like to know what my money is for, I said calmly. Melanie's face darkened. Your money? I'm your daughter. Your job is to take care of me. Jake shifted uncomfortably at the table. He hated conflict, had been trying to keep peace between us for months. But there couldn't be peace when one person refused to show basic respect. My job is to raise you to be a good person, I replied. I'm not doing a very good job of that lately. The words hung in the air like smoke. Melanie's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought she might hit me again. Instead, she grabbed her backpack. I'll get the money somewhere else, she said coldly. After she left, Jake looked at me with worried eyes. Mom, what did you mean? I sat down across from him, suddenly exhausted. I meant that I've been making mistakes. The call came during my lunch break at work. Melanie's school, reporting that she'd been caught skipping class. Again. The attendance secretary's voice was kind but firm. Melanie was developing a pattern of behavior that needed addressing at home. I stared at my sandwich, appetite gone. 3 unexcused absences this month. 2 tardies last week. A missing assignment in chemistry that I'd never heard about. Mrs. Torres, the secretary continued, we've tried reaching Melanie about parent conferences, but she says you're too busy. Too busy. I worked one job now instead of the two I'd juggled for years, specifically so I could be more available for my kids. But apparently, Melanie had been telling school I was unavailable while telling me everything was fine. Another lie in a growing collection. I left work early and drove to the school, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. In the parking lot, I called Melanie's phone. It went straight to voicemail. Inside, the guidance counselor painted a picture of a girl I barely recognized. Failing grades in 3 subjects. Disruptive behavior in class. Disrespectful to teachers. The counselor's words felt like punches to my chest. Has there been upheaval at home? She asked gently. Upheaval. That was one way to put it. Her father left a few years ago. Sometimes adolescents act out when they're processing abandonment issues. I nodded, but inside I was screaming. Jake had lost his father too, but he hadn't become cruel. Melanie wasn't at Ashley's house when I went to find her after the school meeting. Ashley's mother, Karen, answered the door with an uncomfortable expression.
Oh, Angela.
Melanie's not here. Do you know where she is? Karen hesitated. She was here earlier, but she left with some older kids. I'm not sure who they were. Older kids. Unknown cars. My stomach dropped. Did she say where they were going? No, and honestly, I was a little concerned. Melanie seemed different lately. More aggressive. Even other parents were noticing. The shame burned through me like acid. I'd been so focused on keeping peace that I'd let my daughter spiral into someone other families were starting to avoid. I drove around town for an hour, checking parking lots and hangouts, feeling like a detective hunting my own child. Finally, I spotted my car, parked outside the mall. Melanie was behind the wheel, and I could see other teenagers crowded inside. She'd taken my keys. Somehow, she'd taken my keys and stolen my car. I parked behind her, trapping her in the space. When she saw me approaching, her face shifted from surprise to defiance to something that looked almost like fear. She rolled down the window. It's not what it looks like, but it was exactly what it looked like. My 17-year-old daughter had become someone who stole from her own mother. Get out, I said quietly. The other teenagers in my car suddenly found their phones very interesting. Melanie's jaw set in that stubborn line I'd grown to dread. I was going to bring it back. Get out of my car.
Now.
Something in my voice must have finally reached her because she climbed out, tossing my keys at my feet instead of handing them to me. The other kids scattered like roaches when lights come on, mumbling excuses about needing to get home. Melanie and I stood facing each other in the parking lot, 2 women who happened to share DNA and a history that felt increasingly meaningless. You stole my car, I said. Borrowed. You took it without permission. That's stealing. She rolled her eyes, and that simple gesture broke something inside me. My daughter had become a person who stole from me and then acted like I was being unreasonable for calling it what it was. Get in, I said, unlocking the passenger door. We're going home. The ride was silent except for Melanie's occasional sighs of exasperation. At home, she headed straight for the stairs. We're not done, I called after her. I am, she replied without turning around. I heard her door slam, heard her music blast loud enough to rattle windows. Jake appeared in the hallway, his face full of questions I still didn't know how to answer. I called in sick to work the next day. For the first time in 3 years, I needed a mental health day more than I needed the paycheck. Jake was at school, and Melanie was presumably there too, though I wasn't entirely sure anymore. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and tried to figure out where I'd gone wrong. The morning light streaming through windows illuminated a life that looked normal from the outside but felt broken from within. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom, their father. How are the kids? How are the kids? Jake was becoming a young man who cleaned up other people's messes without being asked. Melanie was becoming a young woman who thought stealing and lying were acceptable ways to get what she wanted. I started typing responses and deleting them. Fine.
Delete.
Jake's good. Melanie's struggling.
Delete.
Your daughter slapped me yesterday and stole my car.
Delete.
Finally, I wrote, they miss you. It was true, even if I wasn't sure Melanie would admit it anymore. Tom had been gone for 3 years, but his absence still shaped our family, like a missing tooth changes your smile. He didn't respond immediately, and I was grateful. I wasn't ready for his guilt or his excuses or his promises to do better. I was barely ready for my own. The house felt too quiet without Jake's gentle presence. Melanie came home from school with a friend I didn't recognize. The girl was older, maybe college age, with tattoos covering her arms and a nose ring that caught the afternoon light. They swept through the kitchen like they owned it. "This is Raven," Melanie said, not really introducing us so much as identifying the stranger raiding my refrigerator. "Hi," I said to Raven, who barely acknowledged me. They disappeared upstairs, music thumping through the ceiling. I heard laughter, heard voices that didn't sound like my daughter's friends usually did. Harder voices. Older voices. When Jake came home an hour later, he wrinkled his nose. "What's that smell?" I knew that smell from my own teenage years, from mistakes I'd made and grown out of. I climbed the stairs with lead feet and knocked on Melanie's door. "What?" Her voice was muffled, annoyed. "Open the door." "Why?" "Open it now, or I'm opening it myself." The music stopped. Whispers. The sound of a window opening. Finally, the door cracked open and Melanie's face appeared, eyes red and glassy. "You need to ask your friend to leave," I said quietly. "We're not doing anything wrong." The lie hung between us, obvious and insulting. Behind her, I could see Raven sitting on the bed, smirking like this was all very amusing. "Ask her to leave, or I will." For the first time in months, Melanie backed down. After Raven left, Melanie avoided me completely. She ate dinner in her room, claiming homework. She left for school early and came home late. The few times we crossed paths, she looked through me like I was invisible. Jake noticed. "She's mad at you," he said one evening while we watched television together. "I know. Are you mad at her?" I considered the question. Was I mad?
Yes.
Was I heartbroken?
Yes.
Was I scared for the girl she was becoming? Absolutely. "I'm disappointed," I said finally. "She's different now," Jake said quietly. "Since Dad left." We'd never really talked about Tom's departure, not honestly. I'd tried to shield both kids from the worst of it. The fights, the other woman, the way he'd simply packed a bag one Tuesday and never came back. "You're different too, but you're different in good ways," I told Jake. "You're kinder, more thoughtful. You help without being asked." He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "Maybe I just don't want you to leave too." My heart broke a little more. My sweet boy was holding our family together with his careful kindness, while his sister was tearing it apart with her anger. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised. But as the words left my mouth, I wondered if they were true. The breaking point came on a Thursday. I was getting ready for work when I heard shouting from downstairs. Real shouting, not the usual teenage drama. I found Jake pressed against the kitchen wall while Melanie screamed at him about something to do with her phone charger. His eyes were wide with fear, and she had her finger pointed at his chest like a weapon. "Stupid little kid. Always touching my stuff." "Melanie." My voice cut through her rage. She whirled around, face flushed with fury. "He took my charger." "I borrowed it," Jake whispered. "Mine broke, and I needed to charge my phone for the bus." "I don't care," Melanie shrieked. "It's mine." I stepped between them, putting myself in front of Jake. "You will not scream at your brother. He needs to learn boundaries." The irony was staggering. He needs to learn boundaries? Something in my tone made her pause. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're a 17-year-old who stole her mother's car, lies about school, brings drugs into this house, and thinks screaming at a 14-year-old about a phone charger is acceptable behavior." The kitchen went silent. Jake's breathing was shallow behind me. Melanie's face cycled through expressions, shock, anger, calculation. "I want you out," she said finally. "Excuse me? This is my house too, and I want you out." I stared at my daughter, this stranger wearing Melanie's face. "This is my house," I said quietly. "My name is on the deed. I pay the mortgage. I buy the food. I keep the lights on. Melanie's face went white, then red. You can't kick me out. I'm your daughter. And you can't kick me out. I'm your mother. We stood facing each other across the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where I'd helped her with homework for years, where she'd blown out birthday candles and made wishes I'd tried my best to grant. Jake slipped away quietly, probably to his room. Smart boy. He'd learned when to make himself scarce. If you want me out, I continued, you can leave. You're 17. You can drop out of school, get a job, find an apartment. See how much fun independence really is. You wouldn't. Try me. For the first time in months, Melanie looked uncertain. The power she'd been wielding over me suddenly felt less solid in her hands. I hate you, she said, but it sounded more like desperation than conviction. Right now, I'm not very fond of you either. The words hit her like a slap. She'd been so busy being cruel that she'd forgotten I could be hurt. That I was human. That I had feelings she'd been systematically destroying. Mom. Go to school, Melanie. We'll talk when you get home. She left without another word. I spent the day researching boarding schools and therapeutic programs for troubled teens. The websites painted pictures of structured environments where kids learned accountability and respect. They also cost more money than I had, but seeing the options gave me strength. I wasn't powerless. I had choices. When Melanie came home, I was waiting in the living room with printouts spread across the coffee table. She saw them immediately, her eyes scanning headlines about residential programs. What is this? She asked, but her voice was smaller than usual. Options. She picked up one of the brochures, a place in Utah that specialized in behavioral modification. You're threatening to send me away? I'm showing you that I have choices too. You've been acting like you hold all the power in this relationship. You don't. Melanie sat down across from me, the coffee table between us like a negotiating surface. These places look like prisons. Some of them probably are. But they're for kids whose parents have run out of ideas for how to help them. I don't need help. I gestured to the brochures. The kids who go to these places never think they need help. That's usually part of the problem. She was quiet for a long time, reading. When she looked up, her eyes were different. Scared, maybe. Or just finally seeing me as someone other than a convenient target for her anger. I don't want to go away. Then don't make me send you. That evening, Melanie emerged from her room and actually sat with Jake and me during dinner. She didn't talk much, but she was present in a way she hadn't been for months. Can I have some of the casserole? She asked politely. Jake looked surprised. I was too. Of course. She ate quietly, occasionally glancing at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe the mother who had researched boarding schools wasn't the same woman who'd let her get away with increasingly terrible behavior. After dinner, she helped clear the table without being asked. Small gesture, but it felt monumental. Mom, she said as I loaded the dishwasher, those places in the brochures, do kids really go there? Yes. For how long? Depends on the program. Some are a few months. Some are a year or more. She absorbed this information like it was medicine she didn't want but needed to swallow. I don't want to be away from Jake, she said quietly. It was the first kind thing I'd heard her say about her brother in months. Then be the sister he deserves, I replied. She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. I've been really awful, haven't I? It was the closest thing to an apology I'd gotten from her, and it was a start. The changes didn't happen overnight. Melanie still had moments of anger, still pushed boundaries, still tested my resolve. But something fundamental had shifted after our conversation about boarding schools. She started coming home when she said she would. She asked instead of demanded. She said please and thank you like I taught her years ago. Most importantly, she stopped treating Jake like a target for her frustration. I watched her carefully, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for her to revert to the cruel stranger she'd become. But days passed, then weeks, and the girl I remembered started emerging from behind the wall of anger. Mom, she said one evening, I've been thinking about Dad. We were folding laundry together, a mundane activity that had become precious because she was choosing to help. What about him? I think I blamed you for him leaving. Like, if you had been different, maybe he would have stayed. I stopped folding, giving her my full attention. His leaving wasn't about me, and it wasn't about you or Jake. It was about him. I know that now. But for a while, I was so angry and you were here, so I became the target.
Yeah.
She looked ashamed.
I'm sorry, Mum.
I'm really, really sorry. I reached over and hugged her, and for the first time in months, she hugged me back. Spring brought new routines. Melanie started staying after school for tutoring to bring up her grades. She got a part-time job at a local restaurant, earning money instead of demanding it from me. She even invited Jake to hang out with her friends occasionally, treating him like a little brother instead of an annoyance. The changes weren't perfect. We still had disagreements, still navigated the normal challenges of raising a teenager. But the cruelty was gone. The casual disrespect had been replaced by genuine effort to rebuild what she'd damaged. One Saturday, she asked if we could go shopping together. Not because she needed something, but because she wanted to spend time with me. I miss talking to you, she said as we browsed through stores at the mall where I'd once found her with my stolen car. I miss it too. Can we try to be friends again? I know I have to earn it back, but I want to try. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was taller than me now, almost grown, but in that moment she looked like the little girl who used to hold my hand crossing parking lots. I'd like that, I said. We bought matching bracelets, silly and sentimental, but they felt like a promise. A commitment to rebuilding what we'd almost lost. Summer arrived with Jake's 15th birthday. Melanie spent her own money on his gift and helped me plan a party he'd actually enjoy. Watching them laugh together while decorating felt like witnessing a miracle. Thank you, Jake said to me later, after friends had gone home and he was opening family presents. For what? For fixing things with Melanie. I was scared we were going to fall apart forever. I hugged my wise, gentle son. We almost did. But we didn't. No, we didn't. Melanie appeared in the doorway, holding a piece of birthday cake. Can I join the family hug? Jake grinned and pulled her in. The three of us stood there in our living room, holding each other like we were afraid to let go. Maybe we were. I love you guys, Melanie said, her voice thick with emotion. Even when we're annoying? Jake teased. Especially then. It felt like coming home after a long, terrible journey. Like finding out that everything you thought you'd lost was still there, just hidden under layers of hurt and anger and fear. That night, after both kids were in bed, I sat on my front porch with a cup of tea and marveled at how different everything looked. Same house, same street, same life, but transformed by the simple act of not giving up. Fall brought Melanie's senior year and college applications. She came to me for help with essays, asking for my opinion on schools and majors. The girl who'd once dismissed everything I said now valued my advice. I want to study psychology, she told me one evening as we worked on her personal statement. What drew you to that? She was quiet for a moment. I want to understand why people hurt each other. Why I hurt you and Jake. Maybe help other families who are struggling like we were. I watched her typing, this young woman who'd learned accountability the hard way. I think you'd be good at that. Really? Really? You understand both sides now, what it feels like to be hurt and to hurt others. She smiled, and it reached her eyes for the first time in years. Maybe something good can come out of all the bad stuff. Maybe, I agreed. That night, I found a letter on my pillow. Melanie's handwriting, 3 pages of everything she'd been too proud or scared to say out loud. An apology that went deeper than words spoken in the moment. A promise to keep growing, keep trying, keep being the daughter and sister and person she wanted to become. I read it twice, then put it in my jewelry box next to photos of her as a little girl. Someday, when she was older and had children of her own, I'd show her how much her words had meant. Christmas morning felt like a celebration of more than just the holiday. We'd survived our dark season and emerged as a family again. Melanie had bought thoughtful presents for Jake and me, saved money from her job to give instead of just receive. Thank you, she said as she opened the laptop I'd bought for college. You've earned it. She hugged me tight. Not just for the laptop. For not giving up on me. Never, I promised. Not ever. Jake was taking pictures with his new camera, capturing moments that a year ago I'd thought we might never have again. The three of us making breakfast together. Melanie helping him figure out camera settings. All of us laughing at some silly joke. These are going in my room, he announced, scrolling through photos. For when I'm old and want to remember when we were happy. We're happy now, Melanie said softly. Finally. I looked around our living room, decorated with lights and filled with laughter, and realized she was right. We'd found our way back to happiness. It looked different than before, more mature, more intentional, built on a foundation of respect we'd had to learn the hard way. But it was real, and it was ours, and it was worth every difficult conversation that had brought us here. Melanie's graduation arrived in May. I watched her walk across the stage, diploma in hand, and felt proud of more than just her academic achievement. This was the girl who'd nearly derailed her senior year, who'd pushed everyone away, who'd found her way back through sheer determination and hard work. She'd raised her grades, maintained her job, improved her relationships with teachers and friends. The college acceptances had followed, including one from her first-choice school with a partial scholarship. I couldn't have done this without you, she told me at the graduation party. You did the work. But you didn't let me quit on myself, even when I wanted to. That evening, after relatives had gone home and Jake was watching television, Melanie and I sat on the porch swing where I'd spent so many nights wondering if our family could survive her anger. I'm scared about leaving for college, she admitted. That's normal. What if I mess up again? What if I go back to being that person I was? I took her hand. That person was in pain. You're not in that same pain anymore. How do you know? Because you're worried about it. The girl who slapped me and stole my car wasn't worried about hurting people. You are. She leaned against my shoulder. Will you visit me at school? Try to keep me away. We sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies blink in the yard where she and Jake had played as children. The same yard, the same porch, the same mother and daughter. But everything had changed. August came too quickly. Melanie's departure for college felt bittersweet. I was proud of her transformation, but sad to see her go. The morning she left, she hugged Jake for a full minute. Take care of Mom, she told him. Take care of yourself, he replied. Her goodbye to me was harder. We both cried, remembering how close we'd come to permanent damage, how grateful we were for second chances.
Call me, I said.
Every day. That might be too much. She laughed. After everything we've been through, I don't think daily phone calls could be too much. I watched her drive away, in her own car, bought with money she'd saved from working, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years.
Peace.
Not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of hope. Jake and I spent that evening looking through photo albums, remembering better times and marveling at how we'd managed to create new ones. She's going to be okay, he said. We all are. The house felt different with Melanie gone, but not empty. Just quieter. More spacious. Ready for whatever came next. Her first call came that evening, full of excitement about her roommate and classes, and the dining hall food. The girl on the phone sounded nothing like the angry teenager who'd once slapped me and demanded my keys. A year later, Melanie came home for Thanksgiving break. She'd grown up in college, more confident, more thoughtful, more sure of herself in all the best ways. Her psychology classes had given her language for things she'd felt but couldn't express. I wrote a paper about family trauma, she told me as we cooked together. About how kids sometimes hurt the people they love most when they're scared of losing them. What did you conclude? That love isn't always enough. You need boundaries too. And accountability. And sometimes you need to almost lose something to understand how much it matters. I watched her chopping vegetables with the careful precision she brought to everything now. Sounds like a wise paper. I got an A. I'm proud of you. She smiled. I'm proud of us. All of us. That evening, the three of us sat around the dinner table like we had so many times before, but the conversation was different. Richer. More honest. We talked about real things, Melanie's classes, Jake's girlfriend, My thoughts about maybe dating again someday. Would that be weird? I asked them. If I started seeing someone? Only if you don't let us meet him first, Melanie said. We need to make sure he's good enough for you. The role reversal made us all laugh. My daughter, once so focused on her own wants that she couldn't see anyone else's needs, now worried about my happiness. After dinner, she pulled out her phone and showed us pictures of her college friends, her dorm room, her favorite study spot in the library. I tell everyone about you guys, she said. About how we almost fell apart, but figured out how to be a family again. What do they say? That we're lucky. That not everyone gets a second chance. I looked across the table at my two children, Jake, steady and kind and wise beyond his years, and Melanie, transformed by consequences and love and her own determination to grow, and felt the truth of her words. We were lucky, not because we'd avoided hardship, but because we'd survived it. Not because we'd never hurt each other, but because we'd learned how to heal. The girl who'd slapped me and demanded my car keys was gone, replaced by a young woman I was proud to call my daughter. The journey between those two people had been painful, but it had led us here, to this table, this conversation, this family that was stronger for having been broken and mended.